In this video, I'm going to show you guys some of my favorite buy low candidates heading into week 3 of the fantasy season. I'm Ron from Fantasy Flow. I'd appreciate a like and a sub if you guys like this video and you get some value from it. Let's hop into the first dude, and the first guy on the list is Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase is a tough one. He's still very expensive. There's still a lot of upside with Ja'Marr Chase. I think a lot of owners are expecting him to turn around, especially this week against the Commanders. They have allowed the most passing touchdowns to wide receivers. So it might be difficult to get Ja'Marr Chase off of their current owners, but let's talk about what Ja'Marr Chase has done so far this season. So week 1, 6 for 62, caught all 6 of his targets, played enough snaps, 84%. Only had 9 fantasy points, a little bit concerning. And in week 2 was rough. In week 2, he was getting shadow covered yet again. The Chiefs were basically bracketing him. They wanted to take Ja'Marr Chase away from the game plan because Ja'Marr Chase tends to burn them in pretty much every game that he played against them. And the reason why I think Ja'Marr Chase should turn around, and I think he will, T. Higgins should be coming back soon. We got some good reports that T. Higgins looks to be on track. Ja'Marr Chase gets moved around quite a lot, so even when he does get double cover, they move him into the slot. If there's like a really good cornerback shadowing him, they'll move him into the slot and try to get him into pre-snap motion. So I think Ja'Marr Chase is a dude who, although he hasn't been matchup proof, in the first 2 weeks, I think moving forward, the matchups will start to lighten. It's just at the end of the day, teams can't keep giving up so much yardage to like the tight ends and the running backs underneath. So I think the Bengals continue to improve. Joe Burrow continues to get healthier. Ja'Marr Chase turns it around. Ja'Marr Chase is third on most of the rest of season rankings, so people still expect him to be very good moving forward. And they have a pretty decent strength of schedule according to PFF. So I do want to show you guys this chart that I found. It is just essentially pass rates. I know the quality looks like cat shit, but they are number 1. So they have green all over where they're passing in pretty much every down, whether it's first down, second down, early downs, late downs, neutral. They're passing the ball. So they are not using their run game. Now, that could be why their pass game is so diverse and it's so spread out. There's not really any one guy getting a lot of targets because the Bengals have really like a spread offense. And that's kind of how they like to operate. And I think if we want to see Ja'Marr Chase get more like valuable targets downfield, they need to use the run game, which I think they're going to try to do. Like Zach Moss has, he's one of those rugged rushers who he can like pick up tough yards as the season goes on and as the weather starts to change. I can see that the Bengals lean a little bit more on the offense, which should open things up for Ja'Marr Chase. Maybe they use a little more play action. Maybe they do a little bit more under center rather than only shotgun. I did see a report that said that they will be using under center snaps more, so that could help with the play action. So Ja'Marr Chase is a buy low candidate. He's somebody that I'd really be targeting. At the end of the day, it'll be tough to get him still. He's still very expensive, but I do think you can package like, a slightly worse wide receiver for Ja'Marr Chase, and then maybe you have to give up also like a running back 3 or something for it. Maybe you get like a shittier running back with Chase, like a 2 for 2. And then at the end of the day, like it's going to be tough to get him, but I do think he has like top 5 potential moving forward. So Ja'Marr Chase is the first guy. The next two on the list is George Pickens. This guy's probably on everybody's list. So George Pickens had a solid week 1. He went 6 for 85. Showed a lot of his like deep, downfield potential, a lot of his like big play potential. And he went up against AJ Terrell. So he had the toughest strength of schedule going into the season. The Steelers have the absolute toughest schedule. Like for quarterbacks, for wide receivers, for running backs, it's just a brutal schedule. And we've already seen it kind of come to fruition. In week 1, he had AJ Terrell covering him. And in week 2 against Pat Surtain, while the stat line shows 2 for 29, it shows that Surtain did dominate. At the end of the day, he actually didn't. Pickens actually looked really good against Surtain. He drew a lot of like DPIs, and he had a lot of calls called back on like flags and stuff. But moving forward, just keep in mind, just a little caveat. The Chargers are the number 2 defense in coverage. So they have the number 2 cover defense right now, according to PFF, just after the Seahawks. Now, I want to show you some of the plays from week 2 in which that I was talking about, where he got some DPIs. So, dud in the box score, but he was really good, according to Ian Hartitz. A 51-yard catch over Pat Surtain nullified on a hold, so that's the first catch that he gets on Surtain. That would have been 6 points right there. This is the touchdown in which it gets called back on a Van Jefferson holding. And then we have another 37-yard DPI. He almost catches it either way. So, that's basically like, what is that? 6 points, another 4 points. 16 points nullified by either DPIs or somebody else's holding call. So we're talking about a 20-point fantasy day if Pickens, reels those in, or if he doesn't get those DPIs. So he actually looked really good. He was burning Surtain most of the time. So he is somebody that I would be targeting. I'd be trying to make a trade for him now. I think he is going to turn around. Just keep in mind, they have a tough schedule. Just in the entire season, it's going to be brutal. If we can see Justin Fields start to improve and get a little bit more comfortable, I think things could turn around even in a tough schedule. For example, they play the Chargers, which I just said, tough secondary. Then they play Dallas in week 5. Then the Jets in week 7. It's just brutal for them all season. It doesn't really lighten up. Maybe slightly. They won't be seeing this many good teams. But yeah, George Pickens is somebody I'd be targeting. Next on the list is Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed, I know he popped off for 31 points in week 1, but off low volume. And in week 2, he really kind of disappeared. So maybe Jayden Reed owners are thinking he's like a sell high candidate because of that week 1. Maybe they still think they can get something for him now before, it gets any worse, because he did have a brutal week 2, only 2 for 9. He did rush for 2 rushes for 37 yards. This is really just the Malik Willis effect. I mean, he has 3.42 yards per route run, and that's including week 1, so that's probably what really helped his yards per route run. But Love should be back in the next 2 weeks, so keep that in mind. They didn't put him on IR, which means he should be back in the next 2 weeks, because it wouldn't make sense if he were to miss 4 weeks, because they would have just put him on IR at that point. So Jayden Reed is the clear wide receiver 1. I think he's a nice, I don't know if I would call him a buy low, but maybe the owners might not be as patient. They might want to move him, coming off that 31-point game in week 1. So maybe you can convince them, because I think he's going to continue being the clear wide receiver 1 all season. And now these are a couple guys that I considered, but I didn't put them on the list, but they are also decent buy lows. Amari Cooper is the first one. The concern I have with Amari Cooper is that I don't know if the offense is going to get much better. Deshaun Watson looks absolutely cooked, and I don't know if it's going to change too much, but I do know Amari Cooper should still be able to produce. I know it should get better for him. The opportunities he's had and the expected fantasy points are not matching his current box scores. Next guy, Tank Dell. The problem with Tank Dell is that he's not very cheap, to be honest. If you can get him for cheap, I'll try, but at the same time, it's also tough to spend that much on the clear third option. Even with his upside, even though he's got tremendous upside, it's still kind of a brutal proposition to be like, I'm gonna buy this clear third option on this high powered offense, and you still have to pay 6-round capital for it, which is kind of brutal. So Jaylen Waddle's the next one. Tua is officially on IR as of yesterday. Skylar Thompson should come in. It looks like they're going to give Skylar Thompson the work, and he's giving me Skylar from Breaking Bad vibes, dude. I just know I'm going to hate him. Just watching him at the end of that game, dude, he looked so bad. He sailed 3 passes over on some easy crossing routes. It just looked brutal, dude. And I don't know. I already know I'm going to hate Skylar Thompson. I'm going to probably make some videos about him because he's the absolute worst. So maybe Tyler Huntley ends up getting the start. Maybe they bring in somebody else, but they got to do, I don't know. I'm fearful of Waddle. I just know that he's so fucking cheap right now. You can get him for so cheap and just throw him out on your bench and just see what happens, man, because you're not going to be able to ever get Jaylen Waddle or Tyreek Hill this cheap. The closer it gets to Tua potentially coming back, the more expensive he's going to get. So running backs. Now we talk about some running backs. First one is Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor's actually looked pretty good this season. Very weird mercurial usage in the last week, but he goes 6 for 48 and a touchdown in week 1. Not very good efficiency. Then he completely flips the script and becomes completely efficient. However, lower volume, doesn't get any touchdowns, but gets receiving work. So it's the tale of literally 2 weeks for Jonathan Taylor. But that's not why we love him, man. We love him because he's got the talent, he's got the efficiency, he gets the goal line work usually. And Anthony Richardson is a horrible passer. So this team should lean on the run. I hope they do lean on the run. And the Colts run blocking is actually number 1 in the NFL according to PFF. So here I highlighted it. Number 1 on the list. Colts are 0-2, which is a little shitty, but yeah, 84.4 run block rating. That's what you want to see. Those are the types of running backs you do want to target and get. And Jonathan Taylor is still, he doesn't really have that top 3 RB cost right now. You can still get him for I don't know, you can maybe package a Derrick Henry with something and you can get a Jonathan Taylor. I'll do that in a heartbeat. Shane Steichen got roasted for using Sermon in the fourth quarter last week. Reporters were asking him, like, why was Jonathan Taylor not in the game? What was happening? And I think it's because his pass blocking. I think Jonathan Taylor's pass blocking grades are really bad. They're like sub 30 on PFF, and it's out of 100. So, and that's been his issue his entire career. So, yeah, he rushed for 10 plus yards and 42% of his carries, finishing the day with 103 on 12 carries. So he had a great day running. They just stopped using him because they were losing. So I think moving forward with such a good run block, grade, a great running back, and a team that should be run first, that they should just figure it out and be like, all right, the Anthony Richardson passing experience is over. We need to start running the ball. So, yeah, next on the list is Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren is improving. He's playing more. He went from 31% snap share in week 1 to 48% in week 2. And the result of that was he goes 9 for 42, catches 2 passes for 19 yards. So a nice improvement, doubles up his fantasy points. I think this trend will just continue. Maybe not this exact trend. It might obviously regress a little. But yeah, Pittsburgh pass rates. I'm going to show you this chart yet again. So Pittsburgh are all the way second to last in terms of pass rate. So they hardly pass the ball. They are a run-first team. It's very typical. It's what we expected going into the season. So because of that, that makes Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris very lucrative, very nice fantasy options. So I think he's going to be like a PPR, half PPR every week flex or RB3 going forward. If you're in any of those PPR formats, he's a really good trade for candidate. I just think people who drafted him, you kind of had to pay a lot for him, like, 8th, 9th round, and you're not happy with him. You're not happy with how much work Najee Harris is getting. And I think if people are impatient, you can probably get him for pretty cheap at the moment. Types of dudes I'd be trading, trying to get Jaylen Warren. Like, if you can swing like a DeAndre Swift for Jaylen Warren, I might consider that. Like, I know DeAndre Swift is still like the starter, but the vibes are bad, and he seems to be trending down while Jaylen Warren's trending up. So stuff like that. Try to trade dudes who seem to be trending down but are still getting volume or getting work. Maybe a Zamir White. So that's Jaylen Warren. Next on the list is Kenneth Walker. Kenny Bones. This is a dude I loved in the offseason. He was one of my guys. Basically, in week 1, he's the workhorse. When the game was close, he was the workhorse. Nobody else was getting any work. Charbonnet was not even on the field. It was only once the game was kind of handled, and he did get that oblique injury in week 1 when they started to use Charbonnet, and then Charbonnet actually ends up getting a touchdown in that game. They have a high-octane offense. Ryan Grubb offense comes from the Huskies. And they're showing us that, it's a high octane pass first offense, but when they do run the ball, Kenneth Walker is going to be that boy. So yeah, the injury plus the Charbonnet production might have owners a little bit down on him. So that's why you might be able to get Kenneth Walker pretty cheap right now. Like, you can probably get him for like top 12, top 15 cost, while I think, in my opinion, he has like top 5 upside. So definitely try to go after Kenneth Walker. He's somebody that I really like moving forward. A couple other considerations, just like with the wide receivers. Josh Jacobs is just a volume king. It's great offense with Jordan Love, but, Josh Jacobs hasn't really scored any touchdowns yet, so people might be not as high on him as I am. Kyren Williams is number 2. He has very high upside. He's the number 1 option for them now. Everybody around him is injured, but he's still pretty expensive, so that's the one negative. And then Christian McCaffrey, I just threw him on this list. I mean, he's still pretty expensive for the actual situation that he's in. You have a dude who, Jordan Mason, looks really good, so the team doesn't have a super high incentive to get Christian McCaffrey back. So trading for McCaffrey is pretty risky, and he still costs a lot. So he's not the best buy candidate, to be honest. It's just the upside if he does come back by like week 8, that he becomes essentially a week winner. Like, what would you pay for a dude who's a week winner, right? Like, wouldn't you be willing to give up almost anything for him? So if you have the depth and you have a lot of running backs that you could start, and you can maybe give up let's think. Would you give up a Derrick Henry for Christian McCaffrey straight up? I would. I think I can replace Derrick Henry's production. Would you give up a Ramondre Stevenson plus a piece for CMC? I would. I think you can. Maybe you can't replace Ramondre, but if you can survive, if you can weather the storm, I would definitely do it. So yeah, those are the players, man. Running backs and wide receivers. These are my buy low candidates. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, I'd appreciate a like, a sub. Let me know who I missed. Let me know who you guys are buying low, who you guys know you just know they're going to turn it around. You just know that the season is on the upswing for them. Let me know what you guys think. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.